Middleton. I live in Middle England, in the mid-latitudes. I'm middle-aged, earning a middling salary, writing travel books and teaching geography at Oxford University. My life is extremely comfortable, or at least it was. It all changed when I foolishly decided to write a book about what life is like in the hottest, coldest, wettest and driest inhabited places on Earth. It was the toughest year of my life, but it wasn't enough for my publisher. The places I went to were all permanently inhabited. She argued that there must be nastier places on Earth, even if humans couldn't live there all the time. She challenged me to go and find them. The southern half of the island of New Guinea, one of the most inaccessible places on the planet, is 100,000 square kilometers of stagnant swamp. Stuffed with crocodiles and mosquitoes, it's also one of the last places on Earth where there are tribes who have had little or no contact with the outside world. In an attempt to see if I could survive life in this fetid hellhole, I was going in search of the semi-nomadic Kombai people. Only discovered 20 years ago, they migrate through these inhospitable swamps and had developed an extraordinary strategy for coping here. Tree houses, some of them 35 meters high. But I had three problems. One, some Kombai still practice cannibalism. Two, I suffer from severe vertigo. And three, I hate crocodiles. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. It had taken me 9 flights and 3 days to get here, but I'd finally arrived at Kombai, a small town on a swamp pretending to be an island off the southern coast of Papua. My final rendezvous with the Kombai was somewhere in the interior of Papua, 300 kilometers north on the mainland.
Oh, yeah. Now, here we go.
But I'd come here for a little aversion therapy.
Gosh, there are dozens of them. Presumably these are like baby ones, aren't they?
Yeah, they would be juvenile second, third-year crocodiles. So, what do you
Jack Cox is an American herpetologist who is determined to become the first scientist ever to find a freshwater crocodile on this island.
How strong are these little ones? And like, if you got bitten, what, would it take your hand off? Or?
I would put big gashes in your fingers for sure. One of those larger ones possibly could rip a finger off, but there's a way to handle them that's pretty safe.
Jack was leaving the next day to hunt for the freshwater croc and had agreed to take me with him. But that was stage 2 of the aversion therapy. Stage 1 started right here in this pit of saltwater crocodiles.
That's a small one there, but it will give you an idea. And could you hold onto this for Are you kidding? No, it won't do anything. Hand around the neck, just like that. Thank you.
The baby one was fine, but risking his toes once more, Jack didn't stop there.
Excellent work. No, don't ask me to take that one
No,
as well.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Just hand around the neck while...
Yeah, but what am I going to do with this one?
I'll throw it back in. So small.
Are we not interested in this one at all?
Yeah, no.
This older brother was a little more daunting, but once Jack showed me how to hold it properly, it didn't seem so bad.
Hold it nice and tight. It can jerk around. Perfect. You've got it.
Hey, he's relaxed.
Yeah.
The aversion therapy seemed to be working, until Jack showed me the remains of what must have been this one's granddaddy.
Holy smokes, look at that. Wow. Good bumper. Wow. Now that's a salty skin.
But the point, as far as I'm concerned, Jack, is it's a very big skin.
But we may well run into these, especially at night.
You're going first.
You'll be right behind me.
At some distance behind you, actually.
Having put the fear of croc back into me, Jack took me shopping for essentials. A mosquito net seemed like a good idea.
Number one.
Number one.
Thumbs up. The best quality, number one.
It'll keep out the really tiny black ones that, they bite so bad and carry the bad strains of malaria, so that would be good to keep them out.
Good. So what's next, Jack? Anything else that we need?
Well, if
Vital
we
supplies?
could turn up a rake. I don't know if they've got them here, but we actually, yeah, we need a rake.
Jack hadn't told me there was an agricultural component to this expedition, and when he settled for a broom instead, I was even more confused.
That may be good enough.
The next day, stage 2 of the aversion therapy started. Jack's mission to find a freshwater crocodile was taking us to the freshwater swamps of the island's interior. It was a relief that our noisy boat was scaring all the crocs into the water, but Jack was in full field trip mode. He spotted a trail leading to a nesting site and insisted we stop to investigate.
I'll let you go first, Jack.
I was rather proud of my bravery as we set foot into what were literally crocodile-infested waters, but my phobia was soon forgotten.
Yeah, there's a lot of mosquitoes here.
Oh yeah, this is a bit much, really.
Your legs covered in them, man. Yeah.
Away from the breeze of the moving boat, the mosquitoes attacked with astonishing intensity.
This is ridiculous.
They've just eaten us alive.
Telling me, man.
Jack just seemed to shrug off the mosquitoes as we plunged along the trail he hoped would lead us to a nesting site.
Here. Yeah.
Mosquito City again.
That's another spot for you.
But it was all to no avail.
So there's no crocodile up there.
No, the trail just peters out here.
Let's
Just
go,
came
let's
up.
go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
We'd spent just 10 minutes off the boat and I was in absolute agony. How was I ever going to last 4 weeks of this?
My face feels like it's on fire.
No,
I don't know if it is.
you're getting hammered and you're really swelling up, Nick.
Oh man, just tell me about it.
Jack, though he'd been bitten, didn't seem to be suffering at all. But I'm ashamed to say that I lost my sense of humour completely.
Let's see the sodding crocodile and go home.
Okay, we'll try and get you one.
The final straw was remembering that my mosquito-proof head net had been at the bottom of my rucksack all along.
My face. Oh, it just feels like it's got lumps of rice underneath my skin. And it itches like crazy. And now, inside this thing, which is extra thick weave to keep out the tiny cerebral malaria mosquitoes. Extra thick weave, but it means you don't get a breeze, and so I'm going to sweat like a pig tonight. It's just a hell of a place. It's the worst. This is the worst. This is the worst extreme.
The next morning, after a whole tube of antihistamine, I reluctantly got back onto the boat. My fear of crocodiles had disappeared, but only because it had been sucked out of me by the mosquitoes.
How far do you think it is till the fresh water?
Well, I'd say another hour or 2 at the most.
As we penetrated deeper into the swamp, the going got slower and slower, and the mosquitoes worse and worse. Finally, we had to stop. My head net was all very well, but now they were biting me through my shirt. Even after our boatmen had chopped this huge tree in half, they still couldn't get it out of the way. We were stuck. Jack set off on foot. There was little else I could do but follow. An hour later, we finally got to some dry ground on the edge of Kombai, a large freshwater swamp which Jack was sure would be heaving with crocodiles. It was only after we'd arrived that he told me what Kombai meant in English: the warehouse of mosquitoes. I felt like Gulliver in Lilliput, defeated by something you could squish between your fingers. Unfortunately, Jack was my only ticket out of this purgatory, and he wasn't leaving without the freshwater crocodile that would add a small footnote to herpetological science. Scarily, the best chance of catching the mainly nocturnal crocodiles is at night. Jack's last-minute survival tip didn't make me feel any better.
If a big croc does capsize us, by far the best thing to do is to stay underwater, try and swim away.
Okay.
Don't come up and thrash around. That's the worst thing you can do. If you can't stay under the water, and you come up and that croc is trying to bite at you, I will try and get to the broom here, jab it right into its jaws, hopefully help you out a bit. That's all I can do.
Oh, what am I doing here, Jack? I want to go home.
Now I understood why Jack had been looking for a metal rake. The technique was to scan the swamp with a torch in order to pick up the croc's eyeshine. Once they get caught in the beam, they become mesmerized, and you can pluck them out of the water relatively easily, according to Jack.
Really should be something in here waiting for us.
I'm afraid my role as a spotter was limited in the face of the relentless mosquito attack.
I just swallowed one.
Wait, here we go.
You got one?
Yeah, one right ahead here, off to the side.
Where?
Right there.
Oh, yes.
Plum.
Got bright red, eh?
Pluck this out of the water here.
You're absolutely sure it's a small one?
Oh yeah, you can see the head now.
Got it? Have you
Yep.
got it? There it is. Brilliant, Jack!
Oh,
That's extraordinary!
small one.
For one terrible moment, I thought Jack was going to throw this tiddler back and look for a bigger one.
And looky here. Oh, it's got the pairs of large scales on the neck there, and that is a freshwater crocodile.
It is?
Yep.
You sure?
We got it.
Mercifully, this was all the proof he needed that freshwater crocs did exist on the islands off the south coast of Papua.
Beautiful animal.
Can we get home now?
He'd got his croc, but the mozzies had got me. I was absolutely dreading the next 3 weeks of my journey to meet the Kombai. Jack had taken his miniature croc back to the mainland and left me at the tiny village of Kimam. On my way north to the Kombai territory, I needed to find a boat to take me across the massive saucer-shaped island of Pulau Kimam. After all my childhood reading, it seemed fitting that in this country of headhunters and cannibals, the first boat that came along happened to contain a missionary. Father Nico was making a pastoral visit to some far-flung members of his flock, the inhabitants of the village of Yobe. I hadn't realized that anyone actually lived in this mosquito-ridden swamp, and I couldn't imagine why anyone would want to, until Father Nico gave me a history lesson.
They live because they want to escape from headhunters. Headhunters.
Headhunters?
Yes.
So they came here to escape?
Yes.
So this was a refuge?
Yes. It happened around 100 years ago.
Fleeing the ferocious headhunting raids on the mainland, one group had ended up in the middle of this island. They must have been particularly scared, because when they'd arrived, there was no dry land to live on. They'd built it all by hand. It was like entering a tropical Venice, a swampy Shangri-La. Father Nico had brought me into that most unlikely of places, a nice bit of swamp.
Selamat pagi. Selamat pagi. Bapak tua.
So Nico, this whole island is just completely man-made, is it?
Yes.
Really solid, isn't it?
Yes. Exactly.
I
You
don't
know
believe it. And with their own coconut palms and...
I sort of had my doubts at times with Nico. I didn't voice them at the time. But we were penetrating deeper and deeper into the swamp. I just couldn't believe anyone would actually live here.
But the best thing about it was that there didn't seem to be any mosquitoes here at all.
I mean, it's just not the way you expect. I mean, lots of aspects of this place are not what you'd expect. Do you want to live in the middle of a swamp? No, thank you very much. But you come here and you can see why people do. There's not one mosquito. It's bright sunshine. It's a really beautiful spot. I don't think paradise is too strong a word. I'm going to enjoy myself here, I can tell.
And frankly, thank God. After the mosquito hell I'd suffered with Jack, this place turned out to be the perfect spot for a bit of R&R on my journey north to find the Kombai. As I was given a guided tour, it became clear that although the largest piece of dry land is no bigger than a tennis court, the people of Yobe flourish here. Permanently surrounded by water, they have embraced their environment and become one with their swamp. Just as forests are often described as the lungs of the world, so swamps can be thought of as its kidneys. Wet, lowland basins like this act like giant water filters, trapping and recycling vital nutrients and maintaining the planet's water quality. But best of all, in Yobe, all this mud, swamp, rain and sun created one of the most fertile environments I'd ever seen. The vegetables they grew were varied, plentiful and enormous.
It's heavy too.
4 kilos.
4 kilos, yeah. It's a hefty one. I mean, to me, that's a big yam.
We'd arrived in time for their swampy version of a country harvest festival, complete with the largest vegetable competition.
So our coconuts are bigger than your coconuts, this sort of thing.
It seemed that the best gardener assumed the right to walk off with his neighbour's veg as well, but in this land of plenty, nobody seemed to mind. It started raining during the competition, and it continued all night. By the next morning, the water level was rising alarmingly.
And the island I'm on is in danger of being cut in two as the water level rises. And this whole place, it's difficult to know the distinction between land and water. I mean, where does murky water become land and sodden land become water? You just can't really tell. Earlier on today I saw a fish jump out of the water and start making its way across the land. It took about 20 minutes. It took a little rest in a puddle and then continued on its way. You know, even the fish don't seem to know the difference.
On the third day, the communal nature of their survival here was brought home to me as the whole village turned out to perform their own minor miracle, turning water into land. While some of the villagers cleared a space in the rushes for the new island, Nico and I went to the outskirts of the village to help bring in its main building blocks, rafts of floating root mats.
That's floating, is it? We nearly disappeared. Oh no, here, it's back. It's back. It's like magic.
Come on. Bukan keras.
Gosh, yeah, I know. Come on. It is like magic, isn't it?
Mister,
Huh?
tak potong.
Cut it. Okay.
Angkat.
Yes!
Gosh, it's actually really easy to cut, isn't it? It's like cutting a cake. Yes.
I can't believe that the entire village is made from bits of this stuff. We are pushing, Nico. Thank you very much for the advice.
Back in the village, the island builders stacked up layers of grass, mud and the chunks of floating roots like a huge lasagna. Eventually, it all hit the bottom. Instant terra firma. But they have to pile it up at least 2 meters above the waterline, so that when the island dries out and sinks back into the swamp, it doesn't disappear completely. Nevertheless, it would be another 3 years before it would be solid enough for anyone to live on this island.
I want to rest, but as soon as I rest, I do this.
I felt I'd turned a corner in my swamp experience. I was no longer repelled by the mud and the wet. Like the people of Yobe, I'd learnt to love it.
Now I'm a real swamp alligator.
After my muddy baptism, the villagers told me they were going to name the new island after me. So I'm happy to say that there is some corner of a foreign swamp that is forever Pulau Nick.
People are very happy in this place.
Of course they are. They really are, aren't
That is really happy.
My time in Yobe had come to an end. I had to leave the restful village and head for the interior of the Papuan mainland, the very place whence these gentle people had fled. I was flying north in search of the treehouse-dwelling Kombai of the Papuan interior. They live a semi-nomadic life 190 kilometers inland, lost in this vast, desolate, swampy floodplain. It takes weeks to travel overland into Kombai territory, which is the main reason they have remained so isolated. The only person who was prepared to take me into this area was another missionary, John Cutts. His parents had made first contact with the Moni tribe of the Papuan Highlands when he was just 2 years old, and ever since John has been roaming the places where the maps go blank, contacting people who have never seen a white man before.
And it can end up being a very rewarding time. It can also be a scary time because, I mean, you're talking to people who you arrive and it's like a Martian landed in their yard. They're not sure who you are and what your reasons are for being there.
It sounds like it's going to be potentially a little bit scary.
That's why I brought my running shoes along.
Now you tell me, John. I've only brought my boots.
We landed as close to the tree houses as we could at Yaniruma, a small village established by missionaries 20 years ago, when they had first attempted to contact the tribes here. But the Kombai believe that the arrival of white men will bring about the end to their universe, and the missionaries had failed to convert more than a handful.
There's witchcraft issues where they're afraid of being poisoned by the other clan, the other tribe, and it causes tensions that you and I may not really be familiar with.
It made me feel decidedly uneasy when John explained that their general mistrust of outsiders and their belief in ritualized cannibalism are still very much alive today. The next morning, John managed to find some porters from a neighbouring tribe, and although they were initially reluctant to take us into Kombai territory, we set off on the 2-day trek. The trail was atrocious, but this area has an annual average rainfall 9 times that of the UK, so we were lucky that the rains were late this year. But the humidity was heading for saturation point, the mosquitoes were back, and after just a few hours I was hurting. John, though, seemed thoroughly at home. As a missionary, he was used to living for weeks, if not months, away from civilization. and on several occasions his ability to find food and water from the swamp had saved his life.
Oh, beautiful.
That's the better trick right there. All right.
Slightly tricky drinking like that, but it's beautiful, fresh, and really cool, isn't it?
And you know what?
What?
Don't have to worry about amoebas, don't have to worry about
No, it's all-
boiling it. It's
But what I can't get over is the fact that that looks like half a dozen other bloody vines. and,
well, you want to make sure you pick the right one, because if you pick the wrong one, rather than being refreshed, we could be putting you away forever.
Late that afternoon, we finally emerged from the gloom at the Dariam Hitam River, the edge of Kombai territory. But there was a problem.
Ini kira-kira bagaimana kami mau coba lewat sungai sekarang? Kira-kira.
It seemed that our porters, who came from the neighbouring Crocodile tribe, were scared of the Kombai's magic and wanted to stay firmly on this side of the river.
Terima kasih. They're saying we're going to need to find someone else to pick up the loads and go on from here.
What, like this is a boundary between the territories or something?
Exactly.
Quite where that left us, I wasn't too sure, though John didn't seem too concerned. He reckoned that with a bit more negotiating, they'd change their minds. And since it was late, we spent the night at a nearby Korowai hunting camp.
I really do feel as if I'm in the heart of nowhere now. Just the talk of witchcraft is starting to bother me a bit. And although John says that people who are accused of witchcraft could be within a group, I'm damn sure that outsiders must be top of the list of suspects. And I'm a serious outsider. And you know, it's not just witchcraft, it's you're the witch, and then they go out and kill you, and chop your head off.
After a fitful night's sleep, we returned to the river. John once again proved his worth. He managed to persuade some of the porters to take us at least as far as the edge of the nearest Kombai village. We set about building a raft.
You sure it's going to float, John?
Yes, it is. This is a balsa type wood, and they've got 2 layers here of wood, and it's going to float fine.
John seemed confident enough, but I had my doubts. A length of rattan was strung across the river to stop us being carried away by the current, but this stuff is razor sharp, so John recommended I use gloves. Socks were all I had.
Are they clean?
Yeah, they are, actually.
Okay.
Remarkably. Which way do we face?
We're facing upriver.
Upriver. Okay.
Going to go hand over hand this way.
Yeah.
Don't fall in.
Sorry,
Go
John.
back.
Sorry, John.
My hands were fine, but the raft certainly wasn't.
This is the worst raft in the world. I mean,
Nick, I take back everything I said about these logs being floaters.
dear me, I might as well have built it with lead piping. It's bloody useless.
After a 20-minute struggle, we'd made it. But the only dry clothing I had left were the socks. My confidence in John had been badly shaken by his useless raft, and my fear resurfaced as we headed on into Kombai territory. There are thought to be only 4,000 Kombai, an estimated 500 of whom have not had contact with white people. And finding one of their villages on foot is far from easy. After 5 hours hard slog, we came across our first sign that we were getting close. An abandoned treehouse that made my stomach turn somersaults.
And it's pretty high.
And this is supposedly one of the lower ones, according to these people. Huh?
Oh, really? This is a low one. Oh. It's high enough for me.
We got a bit more walking to do.
It suddenly seemed like a very silly thing for me to be doing, trying to find a group of people who probably didn't want to be found, in the knowledge that if we did find them and they didn't attack us, I would then have to overcome my rampant vertigo just to say hello. Another 2 hours on and there were more tree houses. These ones were higher and inhabited.
Oh, you weren't kidding. That other one was just small, wasn't it?
I felt sick. And as we walked into the heart of the village, things got worse.
John? What's all this about? Is it real or is it just their way of saying hello? What should we do?
Well, I think we need to probably...
What about our porters? Do they know people here?
Some of them ran by me as this all started to happen. So,
Don't say that, John.
yes.
They all ran away.
No, they're still here. I don't think they ran too far away. But, yeah, I think they were pretty freaked out.
So it's a sort of impasse now. Standoff. We need to do something. Do they shake hands? Should I go and shake his hand? Or?
We can certainly try to make a friendly gesture.
Well, you go first because I
Okay.
don't really know what a friendly gesture is
Okay.
here. I might do something awful by mistake.
Okay. Papa, selamat sore. Selamat sore. Selamat sore.
Oh, good news.
Terima kasih. Senang
Selamat sore.
bisa datang di sini. Bapak satu ini juga. Let's go shake hands with this guy and then maybe the third fella
Yeah.
too while we're at it. Selamat. Selamat begitu. Ya,
Not interested.
okay. Kami selamat. Bagaimana, Bapak? We'll try to talk to the third fella. I mean,
1 all.
1 out of 3 is not too bad. 2 out of 3 would be better.
Yeah.
Bapak, selamat sore. Selamat sore. Bisakah? Selamat sore.
It was looking like we were going down 2-1,
Terima
which in
kasih.
my eyes would leave a hasty retreat as the only option.
Bisakah? Kami juga datang, senang untuk bisa datang di sini. Terima kasih.
But John obviously said some of the right things, although I wouldn't exactly say the ice had been broken. Nevertheless, we had a majority on our side and were given somewhere to sleep, although the atmosphere remained decidedly uneasy. Frankly though, after that walk and all the drama, I was too drained to care.
Well, I'm here. There were times today when I wasn't sure that I'd make it. But what worries me a bit more is the welcome we got. Welcome. I mean, I just didn't know what to do. It suddenly hit me how far out of my element I was. So hopefully they'll get more friendly.
When morning came, the mood in this village of wooden skyscrapers had indeed lightened. As curious about us as we were about them, John and I were invited to visit each of the 3 elders and their families in their respective tree houses. The only problem, of course, was going to be getting up there.
I do have a confession to make,
Okay.
which is that I'm not really into heights. So should we ask one of the chaps to come down and show us how it's done? Because I mean these things seem quite small to me.
Ada bapak satu bisa turun, baru naik lagi supaya dia bisa lihat.
I knew that if I was going to learn anything from the Kombai, I needed to take up their offer and make friends. But I have suffered from severe vertigo all my life. I just never trust myself not to let go.
Well, needless to say, that looks
Great
very
technique.
easy.
Great technique,
Very easy. Yeah, well, here goes. It's a bit juddery. Don't look down,
Yes.
don't look down.
I'll try to hold
look
it still down here.
Don't look down. Don't look down. Hey. I'd passed the first hurdle, but this was the lowest house in the village.
Yeah. Fiambo.
Fiambo. Nick. This welcome was a lot more friendly, but I decided to take things slowly. This might seem like a stupid question, but why do you live in a tree house?
Dia tanya kenapa Bapak
Everything was being translated from English to Pidgin Indonesian to Kombai and back again. But eventually it transpired that their ancestors had first started building tree houses to escape from their warring neighbours. These days, they enjoyed the views, the gentle breezes, and best of all, the fact that all the mosquitoes were left down on the
He
ground.
said our ancestors had that in mind when they built these houses up high.
So there was originally a protection element.
Yeah.
And they're right about the mosquitoes. I
Yeah.
haven't seen one up there.
The Kombai seemed to have simply no fear of heights at all. It made no difference to them if they were living 3 metres above the ground or 30. But for me, just looking at the big one turned my knees to jelly. As part of the introductions, I was expected to climb up it, but I certainly didn't feel ready for it yet. So when Fiambo and his family told me they were going off hunting, I jumped at the chance to join them instead.
By the end of this hunting trip, you'll be a pro.
Yeah, I hope so.
The Kombai are semi-nomadic, moving to new tree houses once they have exhausted a particular area's resources. They hunt wild pigs and birds, but pickings in this swamp forest tend to be extremely meagre. The life expectancy of a Kombai man is just 35 years. No one was having much luck, and since Fiambo and his clan had been in this area for 4 months already, there was almost nothing to shoot at. And when there was, I certainly wasn't helping much. After one last miss at some unidentified bird, we concentrated our efforts on more down-to-earth prey.
It's very, very tasty. Very tasty.
Crickets and grasshoppers were easier pickings, but didn't provide much in the way of protein. Nevertheless, we took our spoils back to the village. Lunch was being served in the second treehouse.
It's higher, this one, John.
It's a bit shakier than the other one, too.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's not very stable. Actually, I tell you what, the steps are closer together, which makes it easier. I have to say. In fact, I think this is better than the other one. Well, better, easier, John.
It may have been getting easier going up, but I still didn't like looking down.
So what happens? Do I eat it all?
Oh, the whole thing. Just pop it in. Yes, that's its size. That's not a bad...
Really good. I don't know if it's the texture that makes it taste like shrimp, but it has got a shrimpy taste as well. Missouri, huh? Oh, yeah.
Fiambo's family was difficult to identify clearly, but he said he had 3 wives, each from a neighbouring clan. A sensible strategy that ensures genetic diversity. That evening I was invited to spend my first night in a treehouse, 10 metres up in the air. It wasn't exactly a feather bed, but for the first time since I'd arrived in Papua, I didn't have to use my mosquito net. The next day I woke to the sound of women working. They provided another perfect displacement activity to delay the moment I was dreading, climbing the big one. The crickets and grasshoppers hadn't exactly filled me up, so I was glad to see the women attacking a whole sago palm. Sago is the Kombai's staple diet, a rich carbohydrate flour extracted from the insides of this tree.
They're really eating the tree, aren't they?
Exactly.
It's not the nuts, it's not the fruits, it's not the leaves.
It's the very tree. And this is a fine art. I mean, they're barely skimming it each time. Nick, you have to sing with them if you're going to do it.
I could handle the singing part of the job, but the sago axe was more tricky. Pretty soon, I'd beaten all the sago I could, and, just like all the rest of the men in the village, I let the women get on with it. The sago pith is washed and strained, and the flour suspended in the water is collected in large palm fronds. After an hour or so, the sago flour separates from the water and is collected ready for cooking.
Doesn't look like the same stuff they were beating on a while ago, does it?
Doesn't, does it? Cardboard has more moisture than this. Really fine. Said he lying fluently.
I was doing my best to adopt the ways of the Kombai, but when the men produced their favourite delicacy, sago grubs, I'm afraid I drew the line.
I don't think somehow I'm going to eat it raw.
But
Yeah, well, I'll pass on that one. Yeah, you like them cooked too, huh? Go on. Yeah, straight in.
Fiambo didn't look particularly happy, but at least I now had an ally.
You and I, we wait for the cooked ones now. Yeah, you and I, we're a team. Let's put some on the fire.
all right, we're going to cook some for you guys. Here's one for you.
It's actually nice, isn't it? It looks foul, but very nice.
You want another one?
Very good, Fiambo. Yeah, I would actually.
Bit by bit, I felt I was gaining acceptance, but I still hadn't climbed the big one, and I couldn't put it off any longer.
Well, this is it, I suppose. Are you going to go first, John?
It's my turn, I guess, huh?
Well,
Good luck, John.
thank you.
The ladder, built by and designed for the lightweight Kombai, rose over 35 metres into the air. John made it all look easy, but I couldn't help feeling that he was probably just weakening it.
Let me tell you something. You mentioned having sweaty palms. When you get up here, the air is so cool, you just won't believe it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Okay, are you ready for the rope, Nick?
I'd already decided there was no way I was going up without a safety rope,
Fiambo.
but Fiambo wasn't impressed.
Okay, well then I'll just... Okay, coming up, John. Yeah. See you, Fiambo. Yeah, I'm going as quick as I can, Fiambo.
Every step up the swaying ladder made my head spin faster and my legs shake more.
I don't like this at all. I don't like this one little bit. So why are you going up then, arsehole? Go down. You can go down now if you want. If you want to go down now, you can go down now. Okay, you've done pretty well. And your legs are shaking, so what do you want to do? Do you want to go up? So it's just quite nice when you stop, isn't it? Just hang on for dear life. I'm just going to take a little rest here. You're going up, come on, let's go up. Oh dear, what can the matter be?
You've got
Free fat
two-thirds
Kombai.
behind you.
Got stuck in the lavatory. They were there from Monday to Saturday. Nobody knew they were there.
I've never been so scared, but I've been through so much to get to this ladder that giving up was not an option.
You are within spitting distance right now.
Oh, don't look down. Look out and across, don't look down. There aren't. Oh.
I'd made it, but I was in no state to enjoy the view, or in fact do anything. There's a little bit of me that's trying to say that I achieved something this afternoon, but I don't feel as if I've achieved anything. Because I didn't conquer my fear of heights. I was literally terrified every microsecond. I don't actually, I can't close my eyes anymore because it's like I get that swaying again. And if I had to choose between 4 weeks in a cloud of mosquitoes or 10 minutes at the top of that treehouse, I'd have to choose the mosquitoes. I didn't think I'd ever say that. But the painful truth was that I hadn't been able to handle the mosquitoes either. The villagers of Yobe and the Kombai tribesmen had evolved two very different solutions to their life in the swamp. The one embracing the water, the other suspended eerily above it. They were some of the most resourceful and contented people I'd ever met. But I'd been terrified, soaked and bitten half to death during my 4 weeks here. And I'm ashamed to say that as I flew out of Yaniruma, I made a solemn promise that I would never ever go back to the swamp.